something we've noticed over into the state of Alabama as well. You're in Dauphin Island, and reports of tropical storm force gusts now being reported in Mobile Bay.
Yes, all the buoys have been reporting winds at least that strong. That's 39 miles an hour. In fact, the Seaman Station south of Orange Beach, Alabama, which is the next barrier island off to the east, you can actually take a ferry from Fort Morgan over here. Earlier had a gust of 56 miles an hour, so it's on the way. This first band doesn't have much of a punch. We're getting wind gusts 30 to 35 miles an hour. The sky is now darker, but not as dark as it was because we have the sun out, so you have the contrast. So the sun is gone until tomorrow. But I want you to look at the surf behind me. This is dangerous surf. In fact, about an hour ago, a whole litany of emergency vehicles and folks were headed out to the beach very quickly in Humvees and four-wheel drives. Some gentleman was in the water and got in trouble. Why he was in the water, I don't understand this, but you do not need to get anywhere near the surf. Look at the waves out there. Look how the wind, we've got an east-northeast wind, so it's kind of blowing offshore, so it's kind of cleaning up these sets of waves and blowing the spray back towards the south and southwest. So a very dangerous surf. We will have some storm surge here tonight. If not initially, when it goes by and we get more of an onshore flow, as much as 2 to 4 feet, which is going to be less than what they had with Hurricane Nate last year. And certainly, if you remember back to Katrina, this entire island was really decimated. It was flattened, like somebody just came by with a big bulldozer. And it took them about 8 to 9 years to really get back up to 100%. We may have some power outages out here. That's not out of the question. And also up to 4 or 5 inches of rain. It's moving northwest at 15 miles an hour. You see on the radar where we are and how close that eye wall, or at least the outer eye wall, that stronger band is from us. Say within about an hour or so, it's going to come in here and we're going to get raked. This is the area where we're going to see wind gusts in excess of probably 50 or 60 miles an hour. That can knock down trees, power lines, and certainly cause some problems. But it's moving pretty quickly, 15 miles an hour. We get to about 11 o'clock or 12, and most of this, at least the rain, will be out of the way. The winds will come back around on the backside. It'll still be breezy here right on through certainly tomorrow. Pretty good wind gust right now as it comes in across the land. It's not coming in directly from the water, Mike Bettis. If it was, we probably wouldn't get as much of a break. So we will keep you updated. Let's go back to our hurricane expert, Dr. Nab, and Rick. What do you see on the radar, and what do you think we're going to see here in the next hour or so as far as the worst of Gordon?
Well, the landfall process is beginning right now because that eye wall-ish kind of banding that's trying to get its act together on the northern and northeastern side of
25 miles actually off to my southeast. Mike Seidel. So Mike, I'm looking at the radar. It looks like you're in the rain, but they were unsure. Confirm or deny? What do we got? You in the rain or not?
Yes, Jim, we've been in the rain for about 45 minutes. Not particularly hard. This band is kind of weakened as it rolled in from the Gulf. Winds are gusting as high as 40 miles an hour in downtown Mobile. We're south of Mobile by about a half-hour drive. They're up in the bay, so they're a little bit more protected, although I can remember during Katrina, it was quite a wild scene there. In fact, that night after Katrina came in, we went downtown, and there was up to 6 to 7 feet of water downtown Mobile. That's not the situation now for sure, but we're looking off to the south and east, waiting for that eye wall or the stronger band to come in. Skies have been darker earlier. Now they're lightening up a little bit because we lost the sunshine. But I want you to see the surf out here. I just checked the Seaman buoy, which is about 40, 50 miles off Mobile Bay, south of Orange Beach. Wave height's now clocking in at 13.5 feet, and they're really crashing out there. In fact, earlier we had a bunch of emergency vehicles, rescue personnel, and ambulance. They hauled out to the beach because there was a swimmer in the water in distress. They got him out. He's okay. But it just goes to show you what some people are thinking. Why would you go in the water when it's like this? Mike Bettis, just not a good idea. And this water is going to stay rough right into tomorrow as these winds slowly back off tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon here on Dauphin Island. Remember, this is a barrier island, Mike. There's really nothing protecting us from this storm.
And one thing they do, Mike, and maybe you could talk a little bit about this, a lot of times they'll do natural barriers where they build up the dunes, where they put in sea oats and sea grasses, things like this, to try to keep the water where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and you can see, I'll walk through the sand here and stay off the dunes, but you can see all the dunes here. This one goes up about 4 or 5 feet. And the beach is probably about, I'd say about 200 yards out there. I mean, the actual high tide where the water is right now. So this is a nice wide beach, and they've got lots of rolling dunes and sea oats and seagrass. You know, where I'm from up in Maryland and Delaware, you've got one dune line and sea oats, and, you know, you get a couple of nor'easters and it's gone. So they've got a nice wide beach here. It's going to be in pretty good shape, even if we get some surge and some erosion later on tonight and early on Wednesday morning. Mike?
Yeah, really great stuff. How often do you see something that wide and natural, you know, before you get to the water? Good stuff there from Mike Seidel. Mike, thank you very much. I want to take you to Mobile, just north.
We had a big line of cars trying to make their way northward and inland, and I would assume the same case has been underway around portions of Alabama, including Dauphin Island, where you are. People want to get out of those vulnerable spots.
Yeah, there definitely was more traffic going out than coming in when we came in around 3:30 Central this afternoon, but not a huge line of cars going out. It was, you know, steady. There's a lot of people down here, a lot of cars, a lot of condominiums line the beaches here at Dauphin Island. Speaking of the beach, nice and wide, and look at the surf out there, man, being churned up by Gordon. We're talking 8, 9, maybe 10 footers just offshore, and they're coming rolling in on the beaches. This beach is nice and wide, so in the meantime, we're going to be in pretty good shape where we're standing, and we can always get in closer if we have to. We've got the steady rain right now. Winds are gusting 30, 35 miles an hour, but look on the radar and see what's rotating our way. Now, keep in mind, the center is off the coast. It's hard to find, but you can kind of see kind of the area void of any rainfall. That's moving northwest at 15, and the bands are rotating in. Very heavy rain right now. Pensacola Beach into Pensacola, all the way over to Gulf Shores and Orange Beach, which is now just off to our east. So it's just a matter of time. Next half an hour or so, we're going to be in some very heavy rain and wind gusts 50, maybe 60 miles an hour, and that's the concern when you talk about power outages. When you get up to that 50 and certainly 60 mile an hour threshold, that's when you can have some issues with power being knocked down. Out here, though, right now we're looking okay. Again, the worst of the storm is going to be in the next 3 to 4 hours. Once it goes by, the winds are going to start coming around and blow more onshore. Right now, the winds are east-northeast, blowing actually offshore, so that's going to prohibit any surge for the time being here on Dauphin Island, an island that's been hammered in over many, many years. Hurricane Katrina, I mentioned, leveled this place. Even last year, they had issues with Hurricane Nate, which was a Cat 1. Remember, Mike, that came in as an 85-mile-an-hour Cat 1 well to our west, and here they still had a lot of sand on the west end, which is a narrow part of the island. They had up to 8 feet of sand deposited by Hurricane Nate, and they had to come out with the bulldozers. I think it took them about a week to get all that sand off the roadway and back in place.
Yeah, it can be such a job afterwards trying to put the beach back where it belongs.
This is Mike Seidel live on Dauphin Island as the edge of what is almost an eye wall is coming right across the area right now. You can see on radar, we're going to be in this for a while, and you can see the heavier rain elements extending across Dauphin Island, then across Mobile Bay, Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, into Pensacola. This is all rotating in as Gordon makes its move towards the Gulf Coast, moving northwest at 15 miles an hour. So now it's backed off a little bit, but we had some gusts here, 40, 45 miles an hour over the past 10 minutes with this line coming through. No lightning, no thunder. But some pretty hefty wind gusts and some very heavy rainfalls. And you can see that it doesn't take long when you have rain for the puddling to take over. And I've noticed out here on Bienville Boulevard that we've got some ponding already on the roadways. And it really hasn't been raining that hard for that long. It doesn't take much here on Dauphin Island. So the wind is whipping up. We've got this band coming through, and we've got more bands coming through over the next few hours. And then that'll be the worst of it as far as the rainfall goes and the wind, because you're going to get the strongest wind gust with these squalls. The momentum gets transferred down to the surface, and you can almost feel the wind increase at the same time as the rainfall rate increases. So it's going to be a pretty wild situation out here for the next few hours, and we'll be hunkered down here. It's very safe where we are. We're probably 200 yards or more from the beach and the dangerous surf, and there's really nothing that can fly my way except maybe some palm fronds. You can see how the wind is whipping everything in the distance and how the visibility is down. So we consider this a very safe location for our Gordon coverage. Let's go back to Atlanta. Mike Bettis, hurricane expert Dr. Rick Knabb is we get into the worst of Gordon here early on a Tuesday evening. Dr. Knabb?
You know, you look at this, Dr. Knabb, you look at his shot. Mike, stay with us here a little bit, if you will. Tell us about what you're seeing here, what you see on the radar, what you see where he is, and could this potentially be the worst that Mike sees? Could it get worse?
In terms of the rainfall, no, because after the central area goes by, then he'll be on the southerly flow part of it, and that could be pretty gusty and pretty rainy as well. But there could be quite an intervening period, Mike, where Mike and Mike, where there's comparatively calm weather for quite some time. But what's interesting is the center of circulation could come very close to where Mike is. So it'll be interesting to see how much wind is in this very central area, even though most of the heavy rain is in the banding that he's experiencing now. But he's on the northwestern side right now. I think the stronger winds are over water on the northeastern side.
Mike, describe for us the lay of the land, specifically where you're standing. Do the dunes go up around you and kind of protect you from wind, and so you're a bit sheltered from the open exposure to the water?
Well, the wind, as I mentioned earlier, is east-northeast. The wind direction is coming in from there. So my back right now is to the wind. The ocean is out here. Let me walk out here. Boy, it's easy to power walk when you've got a 30-mile-an-hour wind behind you at your back. A huge dune system here. I mentioned earlier where I grew up on the Maryland-Delaware coast, you've got one dune, and then basically you're at the high tide line. That is not the case here. Chris Erickson up on the balcony, keeping the camera dry and safe, panning across here. So you may lose me here for a second, but you can see the extent of the dune. In fact, where I'm walking by the dune right now, it goes up about 8 or 9 feet. They've got all kinds of vegetation in addition to sea oats. And then I get out here to my position where I was earlier. Now I think you can see me back on camera. And notice I'm a good 200 yards from the beach. And we'll have Chris go in on the surf out there and look at those waves. Some monster waves coming in, at least 10-footers rolling in. And again, Dr. Knabb and Mike Bettis, the wind is right here blowing offshore. But as Dr. Knabb mentioned, once the center goes in, we'll start to get that onshore southerly flow. And that's when we have the issue with some surge, especially on the west end. I described this island like a tadpole. The west end is very narrow, and the head of the tadpole is over on this side. That end is very fraught for erosion. In fact, during Katrina cut an inlet through there, and that wasn't closed off until after the Gulf oil spill, and they threw rocks in there and it rebuilt itself. But last year with Nate, they had a lot of sand deposited down there. Now, that was an 85-mile-an-hour hurricane, and it did come in farther west. This is a weaker system, but it's coming in closer. So we'll see how it all ends up, how much sand we end up on the boulevard down on the far end of the island when we get up tomorrow morning. But right now, we're in the band. I have to tell you, though, Dr. Knabb and Mike Bettis, the band we took yesterday morning in Key Biscayne outside of Miami was stronger than this one as far as rainfall and as far as wind gusts. That one clocked wind gust in the mid-50s.
Yeah, he's on the weaker side of Gordon right now. It probably will get stronger on the other side.
If you're over in Pensacola, you might be singing a different tune, too. I want to ask you, though, you saw the waves there in his picture. You've talked about this before. Waves that break at the beach, that's where you can really chew up some sand.
I don't know if this is going to become a hurricane, but you got a strong tropical storm on your hands, and while you're in the thick of it now.
Yes, things have really ramped up, Mike and Dr. Knabb out here at Dauphin Island. You can probably hear the rain pelting my jacket. Visibility has really dropped, too. I mentioned earlier it's about 200 yards of beach here, and I can't even see the waves now. So the visibility is down to maybe about 150 yards, the rain being blown sideways. And the visibility, boy, I'm looking at it that way. It's hard to even look that way. The wind's east-northeast, and these gusts are probably pushing 50 miles an hour. It is howling out here right now on Dauphin Island. The worst of it coming in here, and we're going to be in this for a while. But boy, what a change. About an hour ago, we still have the sun out with some rainfall and gusts 25, 30 miles an hour. So it's really going downhill quickly and almost textbook-wise. Once the heaviest rain comes in, you get the strongest winds. They almost come in simultaneously, and that's what's happened here on Dauphin Island. This is one of those barrier islands. Oh, I see something's blowing down here. This is probably what's coming down For the most part. This is what we saw yesterday over in Naples and also on the East Coast over in Key Biscayne near Miami. Yes, the palm frond. This one just blew up my way. And I can tell you this morning in Naples, that was the number one thing. There were palm fronds down all over the place. So when you get these gusts 40, 50 miles an hour, you get these palm fronds coming down. What you have to be worried about is trees coming down on power lines. Fortunately here, the power lines for the most part, because they've had so many storms, Katrina leveled this place basically, that most of these power lines are not near any kind of vegetation. It is a barrier island after all. So it's going to take a lot to knock out the power. But this is, there it goes, out towards the coast. This is a pretty healthy squall, certainly tropical storm force wind gust, maybe sustained at 39 miles an hour. This is all headed towards Biloxi and Gulfport and Pascagoula. Let's go to Biloxi right now. Meteorologist Alex Wilson getting set for some of the weather from Gordon later on this evening. Alex? Oh, okay, let's go back to Dr. Nab. Let's go back to Dr. Nab in Atlanta. Dr. Nab?
Yeah, Mike, Mike Seidel's on the northwestern side of the circulation, so the center of Gordon is off to his southeast, but headed in his direction. So I don't know if you could point to or look in the direction of northeast, and that's the direction the wind should be coming from. Is that the case, in fact?
Yes, the winds are east-northeast, right out there, sorry. And east-northeast, a little bit of an offshore component. If you can still see me, I notice our light just went out. I hope you can still make me out on the beach here. But yeah, it's an east-northeast wind, and it hasn't changed at all. That'll happen later on tonight. And boy, the visibility has really just dropped off significantly. Just horizontal rainfall blowing across the camera out here. I'm probably about 50, 60 yards from the camera out here on the beach, but then the ocean is a long way from us, so we're in good shape here as far as being dangerous. We're in a safe spot right here, right now. Unless the winds got so strong, but they're not going to get strong enough to blow me down the beach, even with my 175 pounds. Dr. Nab?
Yeah, so Mike Seidel and Mike Bettis, it looks to me, looking on the radar, compared to his location, that the center of circulation is, about 40, 45 miles southeast of him. So maybe he's about 3 hours from the center of the circulation coming right over him. Maybe a little bit less, but somewhere in the 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 Central time frame is when the exact center might go right over him. But then you've got the whole other side to get through for quite some time.
Well, things might calm down for him after this initial band goes through, and this might be the worst of the wind. Mike, you've had a reported 59-mile-per-hour wind. And then, it may be in and out of this for a little bit. But as Dr. Nab was saying, there may come a period here in about 3 hours or so where things get significantly better for you.
Well, let's hope so. But this is what was forecast. This is what was expected when you get a strong tropical storm. I've been through nearly 70 tropical storms, depressions, and hurricanes, and this is pretty par for the course in my 25-plus years of covering these things out on these beaches, so not only on the Gulf Coast, the East Coast, and in the Caribbean. So this is pretty typical textbook kind of strong tropical storm weather with this kind of rain and this kind of wind gust. The thing about it is the rain really stings you. It's kind of like a sleet storm in Amarillo right now, trying to look into the rain, just pelting you in your face. Anything that's exposed, it stings.
Yeah, but Mike Seidel, I can't promise you that break, because one scenario could be that the center goes just far enough south and west of you that you get the northern and then northeastern portion of the pseudo inner eye wall, and then you're in for the long period on the southeast side. So that's the difficulty, especially when you got a relatively small central area, pinpointing where the center's going to go. So that's just an example of how it's very difficult, even 3 hours out, to know exactly where the center's going to go and exactly what the weather's going to be at any one spot.
Yeah, exactly, and that really determines who gets the bonus rainfall, of say 6+ inches versus say 2 or 3 inches. Exactly what you were saying with the northeastern eye wall, if we get into that and then we start training for a few hours. But I tell you, it is coming down out here. Winds sustained, I'd say 25, 30 miles an hour. As you mentioned, a gust in the area of 59 miles an hour. That doesn't surprise me. But power is on, and, it's going to take a lot more than this to knock the power out here, because the trees, the tall pine trees I'm seeing in the distance really being whipped, are not near any of the main power on Bienville Boulevard, which is the main highway that runs up and down Dauphin Island. But this is unrelenting. Yeah, this is unrelenting. Looking out towards the ocean right now, looks like the visibility's come up a hair, Mike and Dr. Nab. But boy, that's a pretty good gust there. I'd say that's pushing 50 miles an hour plus out here on the beach in Dauphin. Huge dune system. No concerns about losing a lot of this beach. A lot of beaches on the East Coast don't have the luxury of this kind of dune setup. So they're very lucky here. But barrier islands are notorious when it comes to impacts from tropical storms and hurricanes. This island was, Camille, then in August of 69. Then we had Katrina just over 10 years ago, which leveled the island and put a cut on the west end. A big inlet opened up. That's closed off now. And then we had Nate last year, an 85-mile-an-hour hurricane, which came in. In fact, I was actually in basically the eye as it came over us about 1 in the morning in Biloxi, and the winds went dead calm, just like it's supposed to. But even this far off to the east from Category 1 Hurricane Nate, we had upwards of 6 to 8 feet of sand deposited on the west end of Dauphin Island, and we had the storm surge, which was generally, in this part of Mobile County, from 4 to 6 feet. Whipping up right now, Dr. Nab and Mike Bettis, really whipping up here on Dauphin Island.
Mike, we've got that newly issued tornado watch. It does include Dauphin Island there. How difficult is it going to be to spot something like a tornado, and what risk does that run for a place like coastal Alabama?
Well, that's the problem. The visibility is so low. You talk about rain-wrapped tornadoes. All of your years of tracking severe weather and storms out in the plains, when they're rain-wrapped, you can't see them. Well, the entire island, the entire area basically is rain-wrapped. And luckily, they're quick spin-ups. They don't tend to be, strong tornadoes, but you're not going to see them coming. And the best bet is to just stay indoors. I can tell you, if there's any kind of warning, we're headed inside. But with this tornado watch continuing, and again, this is this is something that is often issued when you have a landfalling tropical system. But fortunately, most of the tornadoes are no stronger than EF2, which is still a pretty dangerous storm. Any twister, even an EF1 or EF0 with winds up to 85 miles an hour.
Yeah, and Mike Seidel, Dr. Nab again, I wonder what kind of visibility or access you have to northeast, east, and south-facing shores of the island. The reason I bring that up is where the onshore push is going to be maximized is going to change as the wind direction changes, because as you were reporting, and as we can see from where the center is relative to your location, the push is off the bay right now from the east-northeast. So here's Dauphin Island off to the northwest, but then as the center goes by you, that's when you get the southerly flow that could cause some inundation on storm surge on the south side, but in between there could be a little bit of an east-southeast flow onto the east side. So it'd be interesting for you to monitor different sides of the island for any storm surge flooding.
Yeah, the bridge, Dr. Nab, comes in from the north, from the mainland of Baldwin County and Mobile. And when you come in there, you're looking at the north-facing shore, and off to the left as you come over the bridge. Right now, I'm sure that water's really piled up. There may be some bay or coastal, we'll call it coastal bay flooding over in that area. That'd be off in that direction, because that's where the wind is piling up the water. But on where we are, on the ocean front, the wind is blowing the water away from the beaches. So right now, inundation is not an issue. But once the storm goes by, it's rotating counterclockwise as low pressure does here in the northern hemisphere. The winds are going to start coming around, just depending as you know, Mike and Dr. Knapp, where the center exactly goes. But once it goes by, we're going to be in the backside, and there's going to be some kind of southerly component, whether it's southeast, south, eventually maybe getting into southwest, maybe tomorrow, maybe. But after that, we're not really concerned about the wind's going to start dying down. But that's going to start pushing the water up on the Gulf side of Dauphin Island and all these barrier islands.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this
Orange
is
Beach and over towards Gulf Shores in Pensacola.
Yeah, and what's interesting about when the storm surge might really start to be noticeable in the southerly flow is in between the central area of rainfall right near the center of circulation and the band, the prominent band that's way out to the southeast. There's an intervening area with not much rain, but that's where there could be some strong southerly push. So I hope folks don't think after the center goes by and maybe it's not raining very hard, that's when the storm surge could start.
Exactly. You know, you think it's over with and you head outside and you get the backside. By the way, I noticed our light on the balcony is out, and it looks like I don't see any lights on in the condo we're in right now. I do see some lights on in some homes down the street. So our power may have gone out here at the condo, although I'm kind of surprised at that. Maybe it's some wire coming in, some main transmission line coming in from the mainland or something off towards the bridge. But right now, as far as I can tell, the power has gone out here at the condo here on the beach at Dauphin Island.
That wouldn't be a good sign, Dr. Knapp, because we've talked about this. That we know these winds are under 60 miles an hour. We're already losing power. Could that be a sign of things to come as you go farther inland now, where you've got a lot more trees that could come down on power lines?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the wind itself, when you got tropical storm force winds, and that's certainly what Dauphin Island is experiencing. We've had reports of sustained, in addition to gust tropical storm force. Just the winds themselves can take down power lines and can disrupt power. But then you go, like you say, Mike, into an area where, in much of Mississippi, for example, where there is a lot of forested region that could have trees falling onto the power lines. And by the way, trees falling onto homes is a dangerous part of all this. Remember how we've seen people get hurt or even killed in tree fall and severe thunderstorms?
Yeah.
That's what is at least a possibility here. So you have to treat the tropical storm conditions like you would maybe even a tornado when you get in the middle of your house.
Lowest level of your house.
That's
and
right.
Get into the middle, away from exterior walls. Great stuff from meteorologist Mike Seidel in Alabama. We're back with more after this.
Welcome back to Dauphin Island. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. We are getting the brunt now of Tropical Storm Gordon as it approaches the Gulf Coast of Alabama and Mississippi and Florida, the Western Florida Panhandle. We just had a wind gust here clocked to 56 miles an hour. There is a weather station, we call it a Seaman station, on the eastern end of the island, just a couple miles away, 56 mile an hour gust. So that's pretty hefty. And the power is now out on Dauphin Island. Now, I do see some lights in the distance. They must have a generator, but I am really kind of surprised that this is all it took to knock out the power on the island. But again, you live on a barrier island, you pay the, you've got the beauty here, and you also sometimes have to deal with the power going out, even with winds that briefly gust over 50 miles an hour. But we're going to have more gusts. We may have gusts even stronger, 60 miles an hour plus. Dr. Rick Knapp, a hurricane expert, telling us that there may be an inner eye wall trying to form, and that could impact here on Dauphin Island in the next couple of hours. In the meantime, we're under a tornado watch for those quick spin-ups. The best thing to do tonight is to stay in and stay off the roads. And all this heavy rain is going to be moving inland, even though the winds will be dropping off as the storm weakens with the friction of the land early on Wednesday morning and into Wednesday afternoon. We're going to have a lot of heavy rain rolling up through Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, into the mid-Mississippi Valley. So even though you're far away from the coast, a lot of rain coming in, and again, many areas in the some of the areas in the Midwest, like in the Corn Belt, are super saturated. So this could certainly kick in more flooding. Jim Cantori, we are getting walloped here on Dauphin Island, and I know so far you've made out pretty well, but it's on the way, buddy. Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, you're only 25 miles from me, Mike, so it is all coming. We really don't have a lot of signs of it. Looks a little certainly dark and ominous, but, you know.
All afternoon and evening long, and he's been experiencing winds that have been gusting close to 60 miles per hour. And Mike, update us on the conditions right now. We've got your picture up. We've got this picture of the water coming over the road there just north of you. Describe for our viewers what's taking place right now.
Right now, Mike, we're still in the thick of the very heavy rainfall, stinging, blowing horizontally. These winds still gusting close to 50 miles an hour. And I can understand what's going on where we have that live picture at Heron Bay. That's on the other side of the bridge. And I know that road, we came over today, and it's not elevated very high above the bay. So it wouldn't take much because the waves are already crashing and kind of licking just a few feet below the road surface late this afternoon. So I can visualize what's going on over there. And just on the other side of where I'm standing, on the north side of the island, because this is an east-northeast wind coming in this direction. And so that's blowing the water right up against the other side of the island. Meanwhile, on the Gulf side, it's blowing the water out. So right now, we don't have any worries about a surge on this side, the Gulf side, the beach side. But once this storm moves on by, we're going to get the wind coming in from a southerly component, and that's going to start to pile the water up. We're not expecting a huge storm surge, generally in the 2, 3, maybe 4 feet. The west end of Dauphin Island is the most vulnerable. The power is out here. We're using what we can to keep me lit. Battery-powered lights, that's the way to go. The only lights I see on right now are the lights on the walkway, and they're battery-powered, taking you out to the beach here. Boy, this rain is unrelenting. And this is one of the issues we're going to have, not so much here because the water drains away into the Gulf and the bay, but inland with all the rain saturating the ground, and then you throw wind into the equation. But Dr. Nab, I mentioned earlier, and I got the word that you're a little concerned now, maybe an inner eye wall is trying to develop, which could impact some of this coast here in the next couple of hours.
Yeah, in fact, Mike, I think within the hour, that northwestern inner eye wall kind of band is probably going to pass over your location. So there might be a temporary lull compared to what you've been experiencing, because that has crossed the water and is now over the Heron Bay on the west side of Mobile Bay, and that's what's causing the water rise there, pushing off the bay into the land. And then after that northwestern eye wall in about an hour, then for the following hour or so, you'll be in the central area as long as it stays on that track going right over you. Of course, if it goes a little south and west of you, then you'll find yourself in the northeastern eye wall, such as it is of this borderline tropical storm trying to become a hurricane. The NOAA hurricane hunters have been out there. You can see the path over here.
To some more interesting pictures, and that's meteorologist Mike Seidel, just a stone's throw south of where that camera is. Mike is actually on Dauphin Island tonight. Mike, you have been getting hit with some pretty intense winds this evening. Update us on the current conditions and I guess over the past hour or so, pretty much the height of what you've seen so far.
Well, we've had winds clocked here 56 miles an hour down the road here at the Seaman Station. Also, you know, in relative sense to where that camera is at Heron Bay on the other side of the bridge, they're getting the full brunt of those east-northeast winds. We've got some protection, although we're still getting rocked here pretty good, but the wind is coming across part of the island, and so we have some friction slowing it down a little bit, and some protection from the vegetation, what little there is. We're out here on this barrier island south of Mobile. The power is out. We're using battery-powered lights, so you can see me tonight here on the Weather Channel. We appreciate you tuning in. And the beach is about 200 yards behind me. No concern right now of any inundation, any surge. As Dr. Nab and Mike Bettis mentioned, it's going to be once the center of Gordon goes inland and we start to get a southerly component, and that'll help out the water situation on the other side of the island, but then it'll be worse on this side of the island. We're looking at a storm surge of up to 3, maybe 4 feet. The west end is more susceptible. They've had plenty more issues on the west end. It's very narrow over the years with Camille, Katrina, and last year with Nate. I believe I saw 400,000 cubic yards of sand had to be moved after Nate came through. And that was an 85-mile-an-hour hurricane. This is a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm. That, though, was farther west. This actually could come literally right over us in the next couple of hours. Let's go off to our west into Mississippi. To Biloxi, Mississippi. No stranger to Camille and also Katrina. Let's check in with meteorologist Alex Wilson. Alex, I know right now you're still dry for the most part.
Still dry, but we're watching you and awaiting those conditions.
Dauphin Island. Let's get a report firsthand on what's going on. Here's Mike Seidel. Mike?
Hey, Jim, still getting it pretty good out here on the Barrier Island south of Mobile. No stranger to hurricanes. Camille, Katrina leveled the place. Then we had Nathan last year. But this is nothing like any of them. However, I can tell you this is a pretty strong squall we're getting in right now. These winds sustained about 30, 35 miles an hour. We're gusting 50 to 60 so far in the past couple of hours. The rain is just pounding. The power went out about an hour ago. I was a little surprised about that because we haven't had that much wind, but it is a barrier island. That's what you have to deal with. Fortunately, right now for the beaches, the wind is still coming in from the east-northeast. By the way, we're using battery-powered lights, so no need to adjust your set. East-northeast winds right now coming right in this direction. So that's blowing the water and pushing the water on the Gulf side, on the south side of Dauphin Island, away from the beaches. So right now, there's no concern about an overwatch or a surge. That is going to change as we get into the next 2 to 3 hours. Once Gordon goes by, then we're going to get a southerly direction, and that component will be more negative for this side. That'll start to push the water up. We're expecting a surge no higher than maybe 3 or 4 feet. The western end of the island is always more susceptible here. It's very narrow. This end of the island, I described as kind of like a tadpole, and the narrow end of the tadpole is on that side. We're closer to the east end of the island. Then across the inlet, you can take the ferry over to Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, and in Pensacola. It is just hammering us out here right now. The stinging rainfall. The one good thing about the storm moving at 15 miles an hour, that will cut down on the rainfalls. With that said, inland we're going to have a lot of issues, certainly with at least a half a foot of rain. There may be some spots with double digits, but the wind here on Dauphin Island, we don't have a lot of vegetation, a lot of trees, but you get inland into Mississippi and Alabama, a lot of forest there, certainly the pines susceptible to being blown down, and then the power goes out, and also the risk of flooding. We've got Justin Michaels, will check in with him coming up from Wiggins, Mississippi. In the meantime, just a hammering tonight here on these barrier islands south of Pensacola Beach, over here south of Mobile, as the winds are being clocked in at around 60 miles an hour. This is about as strong a gust as we've seen. Dr. Knabb earlier talking about the potential of an inner eye wall forming. I saw that on the radar just a few minutes ago during a break. We're gonna hunker down right here. We're in a good location. We're safe. Nothing that can really hit us except rain, and we're about 200 yards from the beach right now. And again, as I mentioned, no threat of any water coming this far up, especially now with the wind going offshore. Let's go back. Where are we headed right now?
Hey, Mike Seidel, it's Dr. Knabb here. I wanted to ask you if you could hear me.
Yeah, it's hard to hear you. I hear you, Dr. Knabb. Go ahead. It's really lashing us right now here at Dauphin Island.
Okay, well, about an hour ago, you were in that first really solid band when it was the worst weather you'd experienced yet. Now you're getting into that interior band on the northern side of the circulation, and it looks like the center might pass to your southwest, so you might not get that break. But is this round of rain and wind the same, worse, or not as strong as the previous really strong band?
Oh, this is worse. Right, I mean, the past few minutes, just the stinging quotient with the rain hitting me on this side, and how I'm sure you can hear it at home hitting my jacket. But yeah, this band right now in the past few minutes is worse than the one we had about an hour ago, and the winds are probably at 5 to 10 miles an hour stronger. I suspect some of these gusts are pushing 60 miles an hour. These sustained winds have got to be pushing tropical storm force right now, Dr. Nab.
Oh, there's no doubt about it, Mike. We have plenty of observations on your side, the eastern portion of the island, where we've had not just gusts, but sustained winds of tropical storm force, sustained in the 40s, maybe even in the 50s. So you are experiencing, no doubt about it, a solid tropical storm. And I fear that you're going to get, right now, the northern part, and then the northeastern part, and then the eastern part of this. You might take a little bit of a tour of the eye wall, such as it is, trying to become a hurricane. Are you in for maybe another 2 to 3 hours of this?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'll just have to cancel my 10 o'clock reservation at Red Lobster Mobile. I think that's going to go by the wayside. No, we're going to be fine out here. This is what we live for in the Weather Channel, Jim, myself, and the others. We keep ourselves safe, but we certainly want to show everybody at home just what it's like out here on the beach. It is an adrenaline rush, but we never put ourselves in danger. Right now, there's really nothing that can hit me, basically, except maybe some sand and all this heavy rain. Boy, this is, Dr. Nab, without a doubt, this is the strongest we've been in with Gordon at this point. It is really coming in. Again, still east-northeast. Just hammering us here on this barrier island.
Yeah, you're on the north side, Mike, so it is not at all a surprise that you're getting hammered from the east, because you are basically due north of the center of circulation as it makes its way northwestward. And based on what I'm seeing on the radar, it looks like that the northeastern side of it will come right over you, and that conceivably could have even slightly stronger winds than what you're experiencing right now. So, here is Dauphin Island, and Mike is on the eastern side of it. And here's the center of circulation somewhere in here that you see on the radar, due south of him. And he might then experience all of this as the whole thing moves northwestward. So it'll be interesting to see, Mike, just how strong your winds get. It's possible you haven't seen the strongest yet, because the strongest winds are going to be on the right side of the circulation typically, and you're kind of right front right now.
Yeah, south is right out in that direction. So that's where the center is. And once again, the winds are running east-northeast on the compass, about 70 degrees, I'd say, on the compass, so 360-degree compass. The other thing, I mentioned the power is out. We did have the desk check about 20 minutes ago. As far as we know, the bridge to Dauphin Island is open, but this is not the time to go in either direction, as we showed you the pictures from Heron Bay on the southwest side of Mobile Bay, Dr. Nab, and you can see very well what was going on, that this wind is piling the water up on that side of Mobile Bay into the causeway that leads to the bridge. Now, the bridge is very, very high, too, and that's another thing. You don't really want to be up on that bridge with this kind of wind, because the wind's even stronger.
Yeah, and we've seen already images of semis having accidents on slick roads up in the Mobile area where they didn't get anywhere near the kind of winds you're getting. So definitely you do not want to be on the roads right now. But what's interesting about what we've noticed with the Heron Bay shot that we saw a little while ago, and the easterly wind pushing the waters of Mobile Bay into that area. But that's about to change, because as the center of circulation goes to your west, Mike, when it's west of you, then you and Mobile Bay are going to get a straight-on, full-on southerly push that could cause storm surge flooding on the south side of Dauphin Island, and then that's what could push the water up into Mobile Bay.
Exactly. And, you know, with Katrina, we were in Mobile for safety reasons. We came down to Long Beach, Mississippi the next day. Now, we're talking about a whole different animal with Katrina, but the wind blew the water up into Mobile Bay, and there was about 8 feet of water in downtown Mobile that night. We went in that night after the wind subsided. Now, we're not looking at that, but we are looking at water rises, I would suspect, Dr. Nab, in Mobile Bay of at least 2 to 3 feet once we get that southern component, because once the storm goes by, then it's the push from the south, and that channels the water into that bay, and it gets funneled up into those tributaries up in Baldwin County.
Yeah, the only thing that might spare the top end of Mobile Bay, all the way up into downtown Mobile, might spare them, getting the 2, 3, or 4 foot storm surge flooding, is if they're far enough north that the winds are pushing the water from east to west that far north, and the southerly push doesn't get all the way up in there. At least so far, the gauges have reported more than a foot of water rise near Pensacola, but no water rise up in Mobile yet. But again, what we've seen over on the Florida Panhandle is a taste of what is to come. Here's a new look of Dauphin Island. So you can see these boats that are getting tossed around quite a bit in the very angry waters. Not a surprise there. The sustained tropical storm force winds are not just causing a wind problem, they're pushing the ocean around, and these areas where boats are docked certainly could not only have a water rise, a storm surge flooding event, but there could be wave action on top of that, debris flying around. Tropical storms can cause storm surge, surprisingly, and they can cause wind damage and power outages. And we've already seen the power outage on Dauphin Island, and that's a taste of what is to come. So what we have not seen yet, though, is the maximum onshore push. The center of circulation is still offshore, and we've only seen the preliminary water rises over in Panama City Beach, over in Pensacola, a little bit at Pascagoula, not yet all the way up in Mobile, which is several miles north of the immediate Gulf coastline. But we are seeing the beginnings of that onshore push, where we've seen the video at Heron Bay, just across the water from Dauphin Island. But this onshore push is already causing these gauges to rise. And what these numbers represent are how much flooding above normally dry ground is occurring right near the coast. Folks, where are we headed now? You were Seidel. Okay, we're going to go back to Seidel because, Mike, you are still in the worst you've seen yet, and you, for the next hour to hour and a half, be experiencing the strongest part of this storm.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we're going to be in this for a while. I wanted to ask you about the NOAA plane. Any update? I heard you mention about a half an hour or so with Mike Bettis, maybe a little bit longer ago, that you weren't sure if it was going to have a chance to catch the strongest part of the storm before it moved onshore. I just wanted to check to see if you'd seen any latest updates from the plane.
Yeah, the NOAA Hurricane Hunter took off from Lakeland, Florida, about 6 p.m., and then it came in from the southeast a while ago, and it has gone back and forth in the presumably strongest part of the circulation, and they went kind of over your location, Mike, from east to west a little while ago, and then when they got right offshore of Pascagoula, they did a U-turn and apparently are flying through the center again, headed east. So far, I've not seen any data to suggest that they have found winds that would make this a hurricane. But they're confirming, a strong tropical storm, and we're seeing that measured on land. So, they're going to follow it as long as they can. They're not going to go fly into it over land, but they're documenting as best they can the winds that this storm is producing. Whether or not it becomes a hurricane now is getting mostly to be a kind of an academic issue, because as Mike, as you're demonstrating there, you're already getting pummeled by a tropical storm. If a few more miles an hour isn't going to change the overall problems that we have with both wind and water.
No, it just changes the numbers of how many hurricanes we had during the season. But yes, there's no difference impacts between a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm, Dr. Nab, and a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane. But the bottom line is power outages here. We'll have power outages inland, no doubt. I think they'll be adding up during the overnight hours as these winds will eventually subside because the storm loses its energy and it weakens and the winds get torn apart by the friction of the land. And these winds right now have got to be pushing 40 miles an hour sustained. Holding my ground here. The one thing that makes it easier to stand up out here is the fact that, you know, if it's 40 miles an hour and then you get hit by a gust of 60 or 65, that'll tend to knock you off your feet. But the winds have not been incredibly gusty for the most part. They've just been hanging in there, and they'll gust maybe 5, 6, 7 miles an hour higher at times. We're going to hang in here on Dauphin Island. We're continuing our coverage of Tropical Storm Gordon. We're going all night for you on the Weather Channel. We're going to check back in with Storm Tracker Jim Cantori. He is not that far away. He's in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Also, we've got Justin Michaels up in Wiggins, Mississippi. Inland, another spot. Inland areas all the way up through the mid-Mississippi Valley will be impacted by Gordon as we head through the next 2 to 3 days. We'll stay with us right here on Dauphin Island. We'll come right back after a break from the Weather Channel. Thanks for joining us tonight. Good evening from Dauphin Island, Alabama. Meteorologist Mike Seidel. We are taking the brunt of Gordon, a very strong tropical storm. That's why, as Dr. Nab says, you don't say it's just a tropical storm because this is just below hurricane status. Last check, down at the end of the island, winds sustained at 47 miles an hour, gusting to 58. I can attest to that. Power is out on the island. It's been out for over an hour now. I was a little surprised it went out so soon. But statewide in Alabama, and again, this is all going to be in the very southern part of the state, the Mobile area down here to Dauphin Island, 7,700 power customers without juice. And over in the Florida area, the Panhandle, the Western Panhandle, where they've had the worst of Gordon, we've got about 4,000 customers without power. So not too bad so far, but those numbers are going to ramp up tonight as this system goes inland and you deal with the combination of the wind and the forestation away from the coast here on these barrier islands. This island has a history of being decimated. Camille, Katrina leveled the island, put a cut on the west end. That has been filled back in. And then last year, Nathan, Category 1, 85-mile-an-hour hurricane coming in over us. I believe that was the early morning of October 8th, if my memory serves me correctly. About 1 a.m., we got the eye, and the winds went calm. And we're now, Dr. Nab, just north of the center of the circulation. And as you mentioned, we may not get into the calm area because we may stay. Whoa, now that had to be pushing 60 miles an hour. We may stay in the various sectors of the inner eye wall with Gordon.
Yeah, and Mike, you have likely experienced what you just estimated, about 60 miles an hour, because we've seen reports of gusts above 60. And the fact that the power is out on Dauphin Island, not really all that surprising, given that all the way over in Orange Beach, which is a good distance off to your east, still on the Alabama coast, but getting a lot closer to Pensacola, they've had power lines down there. So, you know, the wind issue is a significant one. And when you consider that you're dealing with sustained winds of tropical storm force, where we've had reported above 50 miles an hour sustained, over land, the wind gusts can easily be 30–40% stronger than the sustained, regardless of whether or not we measure it. We just know that. So let's say you had sustained winds 50 miles an hour, then you're easily going to have gusts up to around 70. Easily could be on the doorstep of a gust hurricane force. So that's certainly capable of taking down power lines, taking down trees, and causing debris to be flying around if you're in an area near structures. And look at how much the water is being churned up. And this is, it appears to be in a semi-protected area, in a harbor. This is not open to the Gulf of Mexico directly. But Mike, I know it's dark, but I don't know. Do you have any sense of what the ocean is doing close by to you? Maybe it's impossible for you to tell now that it's dark.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I'm sorry, Dr. Knapp, but as I mentioned, we're a couple hundred yards, at least 150 yards from the ocean, and the wind continues to be in that east-northeast direction, so it's blowing in that direction. The ocean's like this, so we're still getting a bit of an offshore component, and that is going to save this side of the island for now from any kind of surge and inundation. But that is going to change. Yeah. Certainly once the center goes off to our west and then off to our northwest in, say, several hours, and then we'll get the push, and the winds will be coming right basically at my back. Right now, winds steady east-northeast, and as I mentioned, sustained nearly 50 miles an hour down at the Seaman station at the end of the island. That's very exposed, and obviously getting a good measurement and a good handle on this wind. Really whipping us right now. Dr. Knapp, by far the worst that we've felt here over the past couple of hours.
Yeah, and again, continuing to see what's coming in on Weather Service chat, and any reports we can get. We're very frequently getting reports of gusts of 55, 60 miles an hour, starting to get more and more reports of water rises. But I was just looking at the radar, Mike, and based on how fast the storm is moving in northwest at about 15 miles an hour and how large that circulation is, from where you are in the eastern part of Dauphin Island to where you would get a full-on southerly push on the eastern side of the circulation looks to be 2 hours or maybe a little bit less away. So you wouldn't be surprised in that area if you don't see significant water rises until that time. But when you get the full-on fetch out of the south, then you're going to get the most significant opportunity to get a significant storm surge. And while I'm on the radar here, it is worth noting, while we have a moment, just to show you that there is a very, very large area that has just been put under a flash flood warning, and it includes Orange Beach, Pensacola, Gulf Shores, Alabama, goes northward from there. So that's in effect till 2:15 local time. So Mike Seidel, it's saltwater and it's freshwater becoming a big problem right now. So Mike will be back with us. We'll go to Jim Cantori, Pascagoula, continuing coverage of Gordon. Stay with us. You're in the northern partial eye wall. You're in the part where the eye wall has its act together. Wow. Is this the worst you've experienced so far? It looks pretty bad.
Hey, Dr. Knapp, it's hard to hear you. We are really just getting it right now in the chin here on Dauphin Island. The power is out, and we're just making do. We've got a lot of battery-powered lights, but these winds gusting over 60 miles an hour, and they're sustained over 45. The tropical storm force 39 miles an hour. Again, because of our position on the north side of the center of Gordon as it goes just to our south, off in that direction, we're still getting this unrelenting east-northeast wind along with these tropical blinding downpours. And it's been like this now, I think, for about an hour. And as you mentioned, Dr. Knapp, we're going to be in this for a little bit because of where the
stations that are reporting the guess we can't.
Well, we might not be able to hear Mike
Seidel.
Potentially
could have had it moved a little farther north. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, this is still an east wind. Does it feel more sustained now? I mean, I would imagine that first band about an hour, hour and a half ago was a little more spotty. This looks like there's no relenting of the tropical storm force winds sustained.
No, there isn't. This is, This is non-stop battering out here on Dauphin Island. You're right. The first band was, that was kindergarten stuff. You know, we had some gusts to 35 or 40, but and it came and went. But this is non-stop, and it's not letting up at all. And boy, the rain it's got to be adding up. I have no access to the. I don't think there's any rain gauge. Well, there's a couple of local weather, backyard weather stations on the island. I have no access to them right now, being out here on the beach, as you can understand. But I feel confident we've had at least a couple of inches of rain, if not more, because it is just coming down. And you walk from here to the condo, the parking lot is standing water everywhere, and out on Bienville Boulevard, that's underwater too, from the fresh water, from the rainfall coming down. And as you mentioned, Dr. Nab, this is going to be the impact well inland, you know, literally hundreds of miles from the coast. We're going to have the water issues, the localized flooding, maybe some river flooding as we go into the end of the week, as this moves up into the Mississippi Valley. Dr. Nab?
Yeah, Mike, not surprising that you would estimate that you've gotten at least a couple inches of rain, because in the area just to the northeast, where they've got the flash flood warning in effect, they've estimated, 2, 3, maybe 4 inches of rain has already fallen there, and 4 to 6 inches more to come. So, Jim Cantori, we would not be surprised, I don't think, if some areas here in the Gulf Coast states get a foot of rain. Flash flooding is a big concern, but you're going to get those sustained tropical storm force winds, I think, within the hour.
Yeah, when we left you last, we were talking about how, the worst part of that band was just kind of drifting maybe a little bit north of Dauphin. Let's find out how much better it's gotten, or is it still pretty bad? Mike Seidel down there for us. Mike, from when we talked to you last, how have conditions changed, or have they?
A big change here now, Jim. The rain has ended for now. You can see that on the radar. And what has happened with the wind direction, as expected, it was for 3 hours, just unrelenting pounding, 50-mile-an-hour sustained winds, gust up around in this direction. Now in off the Gulf of Mexico from the south and southeast. So I know the difference because we're getting sandblasted. The sand's been blown up from the beaches into this dune area. So what is going on now is, instead of the water piling up on that side of the island, we're going to have more of a surge now issue on this, the beach side, the Gulf side, the south side of Dauphin Island. This is a barrier island, which is, just south of Mobile. So, Jim, big changes here. We've turned off the rain now for about 20 minutes. Nothing's falling. Wind is still howling. But, again, instead of east-northeast, it's coming in from the south and southeast. And that will be the issue for the rest of this evening and overnight. That south wind and the surge increasing here on this side, on the beach side of Dauphin Island. Jim?
All right, so, Mike, appreciate the update, buddy. Well, I'm in northeast, Mike's southeast, but with Mike Seidel. Let's go back to sunset, so about 3 hours plus ago. Describe what you were in then and how that has changed to what you are in now.
Yeah, a big change, as I mentioned earlier, Jim. The rain has shut down about 45 minutes ago. It just ended. We haven't had a drop since. The other big change is the wind direction. It's veered around. It was east-northeast as we got it hammered for 3 hours plus with just tropical downpours. Now the winds are more around to the southeast coming in from the Gulf, so that's going to pile the water up on the beach side, the south side of Dauphin Island. The other thing that's changed is, I don't know if you can see, but we're getting sandblasted out here. Looks like almost like a blizzard in Fargo in January. It's about 75 degrees warmer. But that is very noticeable because before the wind was coming across the land east-northeast, not picking up the sand. Now it's picking up the sand. Also the fact it's not raining, so the sand is not getting wetted wet down by the rainfall. But the winds are still unrelenting. Just last check at the Seaman Station a few miles to my east, 58 miles an hour sustained and a gust to 64 miles an hour. Now I think you can see the sand and how it's just blowing inland from the beach back towards Bienville Boulevard. This is what happened last year with Nathan when it dumped upwards of 8 feet of sand on the west end of the island. That's the very narrow part of Dauphin Island. Don't think we're going to have that kind of issue this time. It's a different animal. The Hurricane Nate, I should say, went in farther to our west over around Biloxi. This one came in just to our west. And now we're in the break from the rainfall, but we're not going to get a break from these winds for quite a while here on Dauphin Island, Jim. But at least the rainfall's backed off. But these winds are going to knock out more power. Not only we've been out of power since about 7 o'clock tonight, but inland areas where they're going to get the heavy rain and the winds, maybe not quite this strong, but you got more trees and more issues back in across the mainland areas, like in Baldwin County, Mobile, and over towards where you are, Jim.
And you know, Mike, that really makes sense to me now why we saw a landfall west of you, between us, essentially, because you never really got out of the wind. Even though there was a void in the radar echo, you never really got out of the wind there, but it did change direction, obviously, now with the circulation, especially going off to your west. So now it is out of the south. So, Mike, I want to ask you before I let you go, what's worse, the power washing or the dermabrasion from the sand?
I think you asked me what's worse, getting hit by the rain or the sand. I can tell you the sand, because it's everywhere. And luckily, and you know, Jim, sometimes depending on how you're set up on your live location, fortunately this time the wind is at my back, so the sand is blasting the back of me and the back of my legs with my storm gear on. Now, if I was turned around the other way, even with these goggles on, the sand still will blow in around the goggles, and that's not a good thing. So the good thing about this is the camera's that way. Basically, I'm looking almost north, and the wind's at my back, so that's keeping the sand out of my face. But boy, I tell you what, these winds are stronger. Dr. Knapp said they could be stronger. These are stronger winds, higher gusts and sustained winds, 58 gusts to 64, than we had during those rain bands, the inner eye wall that we took about an hour or so ago. Jim?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I want people here in Mississippi to realize. Our winds are starting to come around in Pascagoula a little bit more north. You know, as the center goes more to our north, all right, we're going to come around a little bit more northwesterly and then southwesterly probably tomorrow. So that'll be more of a component off the water, and then eventually southerly. But Mike, you know, you're going to stay southerly, and so is Mobile Bay. And we couple that with the heavy rainfall, and we're going to have some issues. Hey, guys, I wanted to give you an update on the power situation. The only new information I have for you is Alabama, and that is 10,000 customers in the state of Alabama without power. Not surprising. That's where some of the worst weathers come in. It's where, you know, really the eastern part of this inner core has been. It's kind of moved up through Baldwin County. That's the core of the power outages, by the way, in Baldwin County, not surprising. And back over in through here. Kind of surprised we haven't heard any yet from Mississippi, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised. And some of you may, especially along the coast, may have to wait till tomorrow to lose power, because the winds we are expecting to be a little bit stronger here. So when that wind comes out of the south, it's not over, even though the storm will be weakening at that point. We do anticipate a pretty strong gust from time to time. All right, Mike Seidel. Mike, I wish I could see your shot, but could you actually see on the camera the wind blowing the sand around at you? It looks like a blizzard, you were saying?
Oh, yeah, you can see that. I think you can see that at home on camera. Look down here. I mean, it is just, it's atmospheric dermabrasion. I've dealt with this before many times, but like I said, it's good that tonight that it's at my back and not coming full frontal here into my face. we're going to be on all night to keep you updated and safe as Tropical Storm Gordon comes on shore. Many issues inland overnight and the next couple of days with heavy rain. The winds will calm down, but we're going to have numerous power outages and flash flood issues extending into the Mississippi River Valley as we head into Thursday and Friday. We'll check back in with Jim. Jim's in Pascagoula getting the heavy rain now. Our rain is over with. We've also got Justin Michaels, Wiggins, Mississippi, and we've got more live crew standouts starting tomorrow morning in inland areas, including Paul Goodloe in Jackson, Mississippi, which could take the center of this storm as it goes over Jackson on Wednesday. Meanwhile, out here, the wind's still howling in Dauphin Island, gusting, last check, 64 miles an hour. Not far, just 10 miles an hour below hurricane force. Stay with us here on the Weather Channel. Coverage continues from the Gulf Coast of Mississippi and Alabama, right here on the Weather Channel.
Out at Dauphin Island, Mike Seidel dealing with, again, the wind. And this time, it's not the wind-driven rain. Mike Seidel is the wind-driven sand.
Yeah, Jim, exactly. The sand has been blowing at us and hammering us now for about 45 minutes. It all changed when the wind direction changed. For 3 hours or so, we were just lambasted by the heavy rain like you saw over there in Pascagoula, Jim, with an east-northeast wind from that direction. That's blowing offshore, not picking up much sand because it's coming from Bienville Boulevard and the streets and the neighborhoods. Now the wind is coming in from the southeast, and at this moment, it's backed off a little bit. But we've peaked out at 69 miles an hour, and the last dial from the Seaman station at the end of the island was 50, gusts to 64. So the strongest winds were not when we had the squalls and the inner eye wall and the heavy rainfall. The strongest winds have been now that the storm has moved off toward north and west, and we're getting on the backside, the eastern side, and we're getting the wind from the south. So that's going to push the water up here. This is a huge beach. Boy, this is a great beach. It's about 200 yards from the condos out to the water, and there's undulating dunes and seagrass and all kinds of vegetation, which is great because where I grew up on the East Coast, the Maryland-Delaware coast, in many areas you've got one dune, maybe two, and then you're right into the water. So you don't have much of a protective barrier, but you've got a huge protective barrier here, and we're not expecting to have the kind of sand deposits we had with Nathan, which was a Cat 1 hurricane, October 7th and 8th last year. The west end of the island, which is very narrow, which actually had a channel cut through with Katrina. Katrina leveled this island. They had up to 8 feet of sand in some of the areas up there, and they had to bulldoze it out, and it took several days. So we're not expecting that kind of surge and that kind of issue with the sand, but it's definitely going to be on that end and not down here where it's much wider as far as the beach goes. So, Jim, right now the power is still out. As you mentioned, the numbers keep adding up. Florida Panhandle, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, and I expect those numbers will continue to rise overnight as the core of the wind goes inland, and that combined with heavy rain leads to trees coming down in areas where there are a lot more trees than where I'm standing out here in Dauphin Island. Jim?
Yeah, so Mike, just in case everybody's joining us now, because a lot of people coming in and coming out, we're north of 12,000 in Florida. We're north of 22,000 in Alabama. Okay, a lot of those in Baldwin County, obviously. And, of course, we are now starting to get power outages out of Mississippi as well. We are north of 1,700 customers in that state. Again, our rain continues to taper off, but it's still, I mean, believe me, it's still raining in through here, but nothing like what we had. Our max gust at Pascagoula, 56 miles per hour. The buoy off the coastline about 10 miles to my south, 60.
This is meteorologist Mike Seidel here on Dauphin Island. We've been here now for about 7 hours and change, and we've been through the entire cycle, basically, of Tropical Storm Gordon, which has now made landfall just to our west. About 6:30, 7 o'clock, the first band came through, and then we got the inner eye wall, and the rain was unrelenting, and the wind too. But it was an east-northeast wind. We had gusts upwards of close to 60 miles an hour. Now, over the past hour or so, the rain has just shut down, and the wind has turned around not from the east-northeast, but it's veered back around off to the southeast and south. In fact, now I can see the natural gas platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. When it was raining hard earlier, couldn't even see the surf when we still had some daylight. We're about 200 yards from the beach. This is a nice wide beach here on Dauphin Island. Peak wind gust from the southeast, not from the east-northeast, 69 miles an hour. So it's been very windy out here. The power now has been out for about 4 hours on Dauphin Island, and the power outages continue to mount across southern parts of Alabama, Mississippi, and also the Florida Panhandle. And this is going to be part of the story going into the next couple of days, certainly tomorrow. Additional power outages and additional flash flooding. Let's go off now to my west. Chris Bruin getting in the act. Chris, boy, we got walloped here. What do you got there for us over on the Mississippi Gulf Coast?
Hey, Mike, yeah, certainly not what we're dealing with in Dauphin Island, that's for sure.